O Gary Liu, ele é diretor do Spotify Labs. O Spotify acabou de chegar aqui no Brasil também. E ele vai falar para a gente um pouco sobre como engajar consumidores através da música. So, Gary, welcome to Brazil.
Thank you.
Welcome to UPix. Come here.
Thank you.
So, Gary, if you can speak slower than
Yes.
usual,
Yes.
it helps. And we actually don't have the thing. Oh, you have the thing. I love that.
I came prepared.
That's so good. So is it working?
I think it will work. I need the sound.
Oh,
There we go.
sound.
It's all right. I think I got this.
O som tá aberto aí? A gente já tinha testado, né?
Excellent.
So, is it working?
Yeah, I think it'll work.
So, you welcome Gary. Gary
Thank you.
Lewis, Spotify.
Thank you guys for having me. First thing I realized coming out here, I am incredibly overdressed. And I apologize, I'm from New York, so this is how we generally dress. We're not very fashionable. We're not very creative in the way we dress. So I'm actually going to take my jacket off because I feel really, really awkward up here with a jacket. That's a good way to start, taking clothes off. All right. So, I'm excited to be here. This is my first time ever in Brazil, and I came down very specifically to spend time with you guys at UPix, so thank you for having me. And today we're going to get to talk a little bit about being a musical tastemaker, what that means, and how brands can participate and become really, really important people when it comes to music discovery, all right? But we're going to start off by setting a scene. And this is the scene. Now, quick question. Raise your hands if you guys recognize this scene, if you know what this is. We got one person here. Two. Okay, two people. Let me explain what this is. This is a music festival called South by Southwest. It happens once every year in Austin, Texas. Now, it's very unlike most other major music festivals around the world. Most festivals happen in a field, right, with very, very dirty people who live in tents, who don't shower for 3 to 4 days. South by is a little different because it doesn't happen in a field. It happens in a city. It happens to be a city with a lot of love for music, with a lot of love for technology, and a city that has an enormous university just to the north of it. And the great thing about South by Southwest music is that every single bar and every restaurant participates in Music Week, which means instead of having 3 stages that all of the different acts rotate through, for the entire week, pretty much any moment of any day, you can find some artist playing at some bar or some restaurant, which is great for people who love music. But for someone like me, and to be clear, I also love music, but for someone like me, this is very, very overwhelming. This scares me a lot, because I have no idea what I'm doing when I'm there. Because I'm the kind of guy who gets to South by, and I get this booklet that tells me all the different musicians that are playing that week. And I look down that list, and I choose maybe 2 or 3 names that I recognize. And there are only 2 or 3 names that I recognize. And the reason is because South by caters to musicians who are up and coming. They cater to the superstars of next year. And so for someone like me, there are only going to be a couple of artists that I know. And so I'll find those artists, then I'll stand in line for 4 to 5 hours and put my name into a raffle for a concert that may or may not happen. That's doing South by Southwest wrong. That's how I've done it for the last few years. So a couple years ago, when I went back to Austin for South by, I decided, okay, I'm going to do it right this time. But I needed somebody to help me. And thankfully, I have a colleague and a friend who really, really knows music. Her name is Carrie. And she's the kind of person that can take that same booklet and she will highlight 3 to 4 dozen names. Not like me, not 2 to 3. She'll highlight about 40 different names. And so at any moment of any day during South by Southwest, she will know when a really, really good band is playing. So I literally just grabbed hold of her shirt, and I followed her around like a puppy dog for 7 days. And she took me everywhere she went. Actually, she probably didn't want to take me. I just followed her everywhere she went. And that's how I ended up seeing these guys. Very specifically, this guy on the right-hand side, his name is Dan Smith. He was wearing the exact same shirt that he's wearing in this photo. And when I walked into this bar, he was standing on the bar, looking directly at me, and I swear to God, he was singing just to me. No one else, just to me. And I know it's really loud in here, but here's the song that he was singing. Anyone recognize that song? All right, most of you do. This band is, of course, Bastille, and the song is called Pompeii. And this song has been one of the most popular songs in the world for the last 12 months. It has reached the top of the charts in every major music marketplace in the world. The crazy thing is, I got to hear this song and see this band up close before anyone else in the United States did. Now, I never get to say that. I never get to say that. I came back to New York City, and I went back to all of my friends who live in Brooklyn. They're all hipsters. And I told them, I heard this band that you guys are going to hear about, and I heard them before you did. I never get to, you can tell I'm really excited about this, because this is the first time ever. And the reason I got to hear them before anyone else was because I had Carrie. Carrie is my tastemaker. She's the one that introduces me to music that I should care about before anyone else knows. Now, tastemakers can come in a lot of different forms. Sometimes they are friends and family like Carrie. Sometimes they're multi-platinum winning artists like Snoop Dogg. Now, by the way, he is back to being Snoop Dogg. He was Snoopzilla and Snoop Lion for a little bit. He's back to being Snoop Dogg. I asked him. Now, Snoop Dogg, he has a personal playlist on Spotify called Black and Yellow. And Black and Yellow has close to 600,000 followers for this playlist. That makes a lot of sense because it's Snoop Dogg. So if you like hip-hop music and Snoop starts listening to something new, you're going to want to listen to it, right? So people follow this playlist just to find out what Snoop is listening to. That makes sense. He's a multi-platinum artist. But it turns out being a tastemaker doesn't require you to be Snoop. You can also be this guy. Anyone recognize him? A couple of people do. This is Sean Parker. Sean Parker is a technology guy. He was one of the 2 founders of Napster. Sean was also the first president of Facebook. Not a music guy. As far as we know, he's never recorded a single song in his entire life. But Sean is one of the most influential people in music now. And one of the major reasons he's so influential is because of this playlist. The playlist is called Hipster International. This is his private playlist. He updates this constantly. And Hipster International has over 800,000 people following it. And a lot of them are some of the most influential people in media, entertainment, and music. Which means every time Sean discovers a new song, a lot of the most famous producers and art talents in the world will listen to it because of this playlist. And in fact, Sean is so influential that over the course of the last few years, he has been credited with breaking a number of the most famous acts that we have in music now, including, most recently, Lorde. You guys know Lorde and her song Royals. I'm not going to sing it for you. I'm hoping that most of you guys are hearing it in your head right now. At the start of last year, no one knew who Lorde was. She was a 16-year-old living in New Zealand. Even New Zealanders barely knew who she was. She recorded 3 singles, one of which was Royals. She uploaded it onto our platform, Spotify. And then somehow, in April of last year, Sean discovered the song Royals. And he added it to his personal playlist, Hipster International. And from that day on, you can just chart the massive growth, skyrocketing growth of the popularity of Lorde all over the world, leading all the way until January of this year when she won her first Grammy. And over the last 18 months, she has been the #1 new artist globally. Even Lorde and her management credit Sean for breaking her, for making her famous. This is the power of a tastemaker. Someone who has never recorded a song before can have that much impact on popular music around the world. There's one more kind of tastemaker that we don't talk about enough. Okay? A lot of times we want to ignore them, or we try to ignore them. And we shouldn't. And that group of tastemakers are, of course, the brands. One of the world's most iconic object silhouettes, the Coca-Cola bottle. But not only is Coca-Cola famous for their actual drink and their packaging, not only are they famous for their marketing prowess and their distribution, but Coca-Cola should be known around the world because they understand the science and the art of influence through music in a way that very, very few other brands do. And I'm going to give a really clear example. Coca-Cola launched their profile page on Spotify only a couple of months ago. They have not spent any money on marketing to this profile page. And already, they have over 250,000 followers for their profile page. And each of their playlists has between 10 and 20,000 followers for each playlist. This is mostly organic. The reason is because people who understand Coke and what they bring to the music space know that they discover music before anyone else does. Case in point, this. All right, before I go to this, I have a lot of Brazilian friends who asked me to promise them that I would not talk about the World Cup. Now, trust me, I have a Neymar jersey at home in New York City that is soaked with my own tears because I was upset at what happened. So I get it. And I'm going to keep my promise, and I'm not going to talk about this World Cup. I'm going to talk about the World Cup 4 years ago in South Africa. But here's the deal. Here's the deal. In 4 years' time, when Brazil lifts the trophy in Russia, I'm going to change the slide, and we're going to talk about Brazilian World Cup from then on. Okay? That's the deal. So, 4 years ago in South Africa, there was one song that was the most popular song in the world that year in 2010. And the song started like this. I'm about to play the start of it. And what I want you to pay attention to are the first 5 notes that you hear that somebody sings. The first 5 notes that somebody sings. Here's the start. You guys all recognize this? For those of you who don't recognize it, here's the chorus. When I get older, I will be stronger. They'll call me freedom, just like a waving flag. I get older, I will be stronger. They'll call me freedom, just like a waving flag. So wave your flag, now wave your flag, now wave your flag. All right, so of course the song is called Waving Flag. It's by an artist named Kanan. Now, most people that I've ever asked this question, I asked them, what do you think the official anthem for the 2010 South Africa World Cup was? Most people say Waving Flag. In fact, if you go on YouTube and you look up highlight videos for the highlights from 2010 World Cup, the majority of them have Waving Flag as the background soundtrack. And I think that if I were to ask you guys to remember the memories that you have of that World Cup, it probably also has the song in the back of your head as well, right? It turns out this song was not even the official song of the World Cup 4 years ago. The official anthem of South Africa was Waka Waka by Shakira. But this was the song that hit the top of the charts in 20 different countries. This is the song that most of us remember. The crazy thing is, those first 5 notes that I asked you to pay attention to, those 5 notes are Coca-Cola's theme song. I don't know if most of you guys know this. If you listen to Coke's anthem from this year's World Cup, which is called The World Is Ours by David Corey, as well as Aloe Black, if you watch Coca-Cola's TV commercials over the last few years, you will hear those 5 notes repeated over and over again. In fact, before the World Cup 4 years ago, Kanan was not an artist that you would have heard of. A Somalian-born artist who lived in Canada. He had one hit, and that hit was Waving Flag, except it was a different version of the song. The original song was very dark. The lyrics were about revolution in the streets of Somalia. And it came to number 2. It hit number 2 on the Canadian charts, but it never went anywhere else in the world. Coca-Cola heard that song, said, we are going to make that the global anthem, got Kanan to re-record it with happier lyrics, got Kanan to add the 5 Coca-Cola notes, and it became the song that we remember from 4 years ago. That's the kind of impact that a brand that understands the science and the art of influence and impact through music can make around the world. So the question becomes, do you need to be Coke with their history, their distribution, their marketing dollars to do this? The easy answer, thankfully, by the way, for all of us, including Spotify, the easy answer is no, you don't need to be Coke. But you do need to understand the science and the art that Coke understands. And that's the secret I'm going to give you guys today. And we're going to go with the motif of 3. We're going to talk about 3 points of science. 3 things that you should know about how music affects our human brain. We're going to talk about 3 things to do with art. 3 things you should know about how consumers interact with music. And finally, 3 relatively easy steps, at least easy enough to explain, to take a brand from not working with music to becoming a global music tastemaker. Okay, that's what we're going to do today. We're going to start with the brain. I'm going to clarify. I am not a brain scientist. I'm not a neurosurgeon, neurologist of any kind. So I'm going to explain this in the simplest of ways because that's the only way that I understand it myself. Okay, so don't worry. It's not going to be too complicated. We're going to talk about 3 parts of the brain that react very, very differently when you listen to music. Those 3 parts are called the hippocampus, the amygdala, and the prefrontal cortex. I'm going to test you on this afterwards, so remember those names. I'm kidding. Don't worry. I'm actually not going to test you. We have a guy up here taking notes furiously. I'm not going to test you, I promise you. We're going to go one by one. We're going to start with the hippocampus. This is the part of the brain that manages long-term memory. So everything you remember from your childhood is because of the hippocampus. Now, if I tell you that music helps you remember what you've done in the past, I'm going to guess that no one is going to argue with me, right? The question is, how much does it help? Dr. Baird from Sydney and Dr. Sampson from France cooperatively have been studying the effect of music on long-term memory for many years. Earlier this year, they published their findings for the very first time. And what they found was extraordinary. Very specifically, they were looking at people with massive amounts of brain damage. People who've got into motor accidents or sporting accidents and who have what they call autobiographical amnesia. They don't remember their past. And they were trying to figure out how multiple different kinds of stimuli would help them remember. They found that music was by far the most effective stimulus at bringing back memories in injured brains. Much more effective than words, than pictures, than smell, than touch. Music was by far the most effective. In fact, it was so effective that if you took an injured brain and you put it next to a healthy brain, using music, both of those 2 brains would remember the same amount of information and the same quality of information, even though one was injured and the other one was not. That's how powerful music is for long-term memory recall. That's the hippocampus. The second part of the brain we talk about is the amygdala. This is the part of the brain that manages your emotions. We know that if your amygdala is damaged, you don't feel any fear. But the bad thing is you also can't tell the difference between happiness and sadness, which kind of sucks. Now, Dr. Fritz is a German doctor who's been studying musical psychology for quite some time. And in 2009, he published a very, very famous, influential paper about the work that he's been doing with an African tribe in northern Cameroon. This tribe is called the Mafa tribe. What he did was he went to Mafa and he brought 3 different types of Western music, classical music. Each piece of music is supposed to convey a specific basic human emotion: happiness, sadness, and fear. Now we know, most of us do at least, that if you play a classical song in a major chord, it's supposed to be happy. If you play it in a minor chord, it's supposed to be sad. The Mafa tribe do not in any way have that concept. And they specifically have never been exposed to classical music like this before. So what Dr. Fritz did was he played them this classical music and he asked them what kinds of emotion they have while listening to it. What he found was extraordinary. He found that the Mafa tribe had the same capacity as people from the West who had grown up with classical music to understand basic human emotion conveyed through classical music, which led all of the scientific journals that his paper was published in to conclude that music was the one and only true universal language that conveys human emotion. The only thing that, regardless of language, regardless of culture, can express the same emotion from one place and one people to another. The third part of the brain is the prefrontal cortex, right in the front here behind my eyes. This part of the brain manages short-term memory recall. And very specifically, it manages my immediate intent to act. Okay? So when I came on stage and I decided to make the stupid move of taking off my jacket, that was my prefrontal cortex messing with me. Okay? That was the prefrontal cortex going, oh my gosh, you're, overdressed and you should take your jacket off even though it's a bad idea. Now, the prefrontal cortex reacts very, very specifically to music. These 2 guys, Dr. North, Dr. Hargreaves from Great Britain, have been studying this for 20 years. And they've been able to quantify exactly how much music affects the way that we immediately understand brands. They found that brands with really, really strong musical identities are twice more likely to be recalled. And follow-up studies have found that brands with very, very strong musical identities are able to keep people in stores longer, which leads to about a 38% increase in sales. Okay, that's a huge boost in sales purely because they have a good musical identity. This is the prefrontal cortex and how it reacts to music. It increases our intent to buy. So, 3 things that happen to our brain when we listen to music. How does these actually manifest themselves in real life? We're going to move on to the art part, and I'm going to share with you what we found about our consumers and about how they react to music and how they actually listen to music. Here's the first insight. We spent 2 years asking consumers why they care about music. And the number one answer they gave us is because music matters in moments. Okay, here's what that means. They mean 2 things. The first is that music helps them create and remember moments in their lives, like a graduation, a wedding, or the birth of a child. And number 2, music helps get them through a day. It helps get them through the morning commute, which, based on today's traffic that I experience, I have to imagine that the morning commute in Sao Paulo is really, really difficult at times. It helps them get through their run, and it helps them set the mood for an intimate dinner with friends. Okay, that's what music is there for, to help them get through the day, to help them create and remember memories from their past. Most importantly, across these moments, there are 5 ways that people use music, with expression and connection being by far the most important. I use music to tell other people who I am and what I'm feeling. okay? That's what our consumers have told us. That's insight number one. Insight number two is that music listening activity actually reflects our lives. So what we listen to can actually tell a lot about what we do and what we care about. I'm going to give two examples using data. The first one is that on the Spotify platform globally, we have over 600,000 playlists that are listed or titled as study playlists. These are playlists that you guys have built that you say you use when you need to concentrate. If I take all 600,000 playlists together and I pull out the 5 most common songs, can anyone guess what genre all of those songs belong to? They're all classical masterpieces. Now the thing is, we know that we have a lot of classical music on our platform, but we know that people don't listen to classical music anymore. It under-indexes a lot on listens. Yet, when you need to concentrate, you turn on classical music. And to be honest, you turn on these 5 songs because they're famous and you don't know any better, right? Because we don't know anything about classical music. We listen to what everyone else listens to. But when you want to study, that's what you listen to. So if you're 25 years old and I'm watching your listening habits and you go from like at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, you go from hardcore metal and you suddenly switch to classical music, I can be pretty sure that your boss just gave you a really, really hard assignment and you need to concentrate and finish a deck or an Excel spreadsheet. This reflects what we do in our lives. A second example, take you guys all the way to the United States with me, the great American barbecue. We love our barbecues in the US. We don't have the kind of barbecue you guys have in Brazil, which I absolutely love. We have really, really bad barbecues with burnt burgers and undercooked hot dogs, but we love them anyway. The Great American Barbecue, we can take a look in the United States at when people edit their barbecue playlists. And if we take a look at that, this is what we see. Throughout the summer, people edit their barbecue playlists on Saturdays, right before they host. And of course, you see that gigantic spike? That spike is July 4th. That's our national holiday of barbecues, by the way. No other reason, just a national holiday for barbecues. So based on when people actively change what they want to listen to, actively curate and create playlists, we can tell what's going on in an entire country. Which leads me to my third insight. People who are most active in curating and listening to music are also the people that brands should care about the most because they are what we call early adopters. They're the people who try your products first, who use social media every single day and are so annoying on social media that they change the behavior of their family and friends. They influence them into changing what they buy and what they use. And I really do mean, by the way, that they're annoying. In fact, if you take a look at social activity, at every active category of social sharing, social commenting, social watching, active music listeners over-index versus everyone else. Okay? So the people who start the really, really annoying arguments online, active music listeners. The people who post pictures of what they eat every single day, active music listeners. But the great thing is, if you are a brand and you get a great piece of content into the hands of an active music listener, all of their friends, all of their family are going to see it, are going to hear it, are going to be changed and affected by it. That's what we found. That's the third insight. All right. So back to brands. 3 ways that music affects our brain. It helps us bring back long-term memories, right? It helps convey universal emotion, and it helps us make decisions and creates positive, immediate reaction. 3 ways that consumers use and listen to music. We know that music matters to them in moments. We know that music listening activity reflects what they do every single day. And finally, we know that active music listeners also happen to be the influencers in any community. What do you do with all this? What do you do with all this in a world where we now have technologies and platforms that allow us to be global everywhere at once? We also have platforms like Spotify that allow us to follow a user, a consumer, through every moment of their day across literally every activity. So with all of this technology and power and all of this knowledge, what do we do with it? Here's what I promised. 3 easy steps, but those 3 easy steps are for one reason. It's to get you and your brands to a meaningful musical identity. That's what matters. That's what cuts through. Here's what I mean. Having a musical identity is one thing. Coca-Cola's musical identity is that they're happy. Happiness, open happiness. But they need to have it be meaningful. That means that at some point and every day, it needs to cut through all of the noise and it needs to make somebody's life better. That's the key point. Here are the 3 ways that a brand can do this. Step number 1. Decide to own a moment, an activity, or an emotion. Don't make this complicated. A moment, an activity, or emotion. Okay? Like Coca-Cola, they own an emotion. They own happiness. We're going to use this example, Reebok. Reebok decided to own the moment of the motivational the motivational workout. Step number 2. Based on what you decide to own, have an opinion about what great music sounds like. The way that Reebok did this was they got their world-famous athletes to create playlists of motivational workout music, and they started sharing it with all of their consumers. So this was Reebok saying, if you want to work out, if you want to get jacked and fit, this is the music you should be listening to because the world's best athletes are listening to this. And step number 3, find a way to make consumers come back to you over and over again, raise their hands and ask, what does great music sound like? Give me more great music. So you have to get them to come back over again. Here's the example, and for this example, I need you guys to come into fantasy world for me. So suspend reality for a second and come into fantasy world and imagine a world where I am healthy and I am an athlete. So it's hard because I'm like 120 pounds, which is the weight of a small child. But imagine that I'm athletic. And imagine that I run every single day. The way that Reebok gets me to come back to them over and over again and ask for more great music is they built a utility called FitList. This utility allows me to put in that I'm going to run for 60 minutes. I want to run at high intensity, and today I want to listen to Coldplay. And Reebok will spit out a unique playlist just for me that lasts for at least 60 minutes of music that has high beats per minute so I can run at high intensity that sounds like or is Coldplay. So every day that I want to run, I can go to Reebok and I can get a brand new playlist that helps me get through my workout. That's how they cut through. That's how they make a difference in my life. I can't get through my run without them. That's the 3rd step. Now, I'm going to give a couple of examples of this, but before that, over the course of the last year, we've been testing this hypothesis with clients, and what we found is not only has basic media performance exceeded all of our expectations, they're 3 times and twice as high as market average, but more importantly to me, brand recall and brand loyalty are through the roof. People start caring about a brand if you can help them get through their day with music. That's the reality. So here are 3 examples of brands who've done this really well. The first one is Auto, Chevrolet. Now Chevy, about 2 years ago, launched a car called the Sonic, the Chevy Sonic. This is a picture of the Chevy Sonic being thrown out of a plane. Now the reason why the Sonic is being thrown out of a plane is because the Sonic is supposed to be a car of firsts. And this is the first time that this car has ever skydived. And by the way, just in case you're worrying, the car made it. That thing strapped to the top of the car is a parachute. The parachute went off. The car landed completely safely. This worked. So Chevy came to us and said, we are the car of firsts. So we want to own the moment that somebody experiences something great for the very first time. Here's what we did. We built a platform where we took our data and we said, here are 10 artists that we think are about to become huge. We give that data to Chevy, and we say, Chevy, go push those songs and those artists to your consumers. That was their step number 2. They started telling their consumers, here's great music that you should experience for the very first time. And step number 3 came very, very naturally when this competition, every week they would cut somebody, led to Macklemore and Ryan Lewis becoming the first winner. This was before the Rolling Stone, before Pitchfork, before any normal music brand or somebody that really knows music identified that Macklemore and Ryan Lewis with their song Thrift Shop, right? Everyone know Thrift Shop? No, you don't know Thrift Shop? Sorry, I'm just not gonna rap here. I wish I could, but I'm not gonna rap. Thrift Shop is a huge, huge hip hop song around the world. Before anyone else knew that Thrift Shop was gonna be big, Chevrolet knew. And the moment they did that, people started coming back to them over and over again, asking for more great music because they proved themselves to be really, really strong at musical identity, okay? Second example, entertainment. Universal, with their movie Pitch Perfect. This is a movie about a bunch of girls in college finding themselves, having self-discovery, okay? And so Universal wanted to own the moment of self-discovery, the moment you realize this is who I am. So that was their step number one. Their step number two was with an ad, this is an ad campaign. You listen to an audio ad that tells you, hey, tell us who you think you are. And once you input all of your own personality traits, you watch a trailer and you get back a unique 40-song playlist just for you based on your personality. And you also get a character match based on a character in the movie. This playlist is just for you, totally unique, 40 songs. This was their step number two. They told you, based on who you think you are, here's the music that you might like. Step number three was that these playlists were so good, people kept coming back to listen to them. The first time they listened to them, they would spend 17 minutes with the brand. 17. Have you guys ever, for those of you who work at an agency, ever had an ad with 17 minutes of dwell time? People spent 17 minutes on this campaign, on the playlist that was a Universal Pitch Perfect playlist because they were good music. And then they kept coming back. In the first 3 months, over 3,000 hours were spent on the playlists that were generated by Universal Pitch Perfect. It's a lot of engagement. The last example, I'm going to end with this one, and it's going to be really, really quick, is a tech example, and it's our own, Spotify. As marketers, we want to be able to market our very own products. And so we took all of these learnings, and we created something that showed our identity. And here it is. So hopefully this gives you an idea of, as a brand, how you can tell an incredibly effective story about your identity with music. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with is just a very simple question. What is your musical identity? It doesn't matter if you're representing a brand or you're just somebody who loves music. I think this question is one that's really worthwhile for you to answer. Thank you. Bia, you can clap now.
Alguém tem pergunta para o Gary? I can translate, yes, eu posso traduzir. Okay. So what were the difficulties you have to face when you brought Spotify to Brazil?
I wouldn't call them difficulties. I would call them really interesting challenges. Now, Brazil is a very, very unique music marketplace, and we're really excited about being here. First of all, there's 200 million people here. You have, and by the way, there are 200 million people with 280 million cell phone lines. So some of you guys have more than one cell phone, or some of you guys have a second cell phone number that you don't want your wife or your girlfriend to know about. Okay? And on top of that, you have massive penetration in high-speed internet. And you guys are also one of the 10 largest, you're number 8 in music consumption in the world. But you consume music in a very, very different way. You guys love local music. 60% of the music that is consumed in Brazil is local Brazilian music. That's higher than anywhere else in the world for local music consumption. You're up there with Japan and India, okay? And the second thing that's really challenging and very different is that you guys love to own your music. You love to buy music, whether it's iTunes downloads or it's CDs or vinyls, you love to own it, which is also very, very different than most places around the world. And of course, the third challenge is that when you want to own your music, most of the time, the way for you to own it is that you guys pirate it. You guys download it illegally, right? So those three things are massive challenges for us. The third one we've dealt with. We know how to deal with piracy. We know how to beat piracy because our product is the same price as piracy. It's free, and it's a lot easier to use than piracy. But the other two we're learning about. And so we're working a lot with all of the regional indie labels who have all of your favorite Brazilian artists to make sure all of that music is on our platform. And we launched with most of it already on Spotify. And secondarily, we're learning how to change your minds about having to own music. Because we think that you don't need to own music. In fact, it's better if you don't own music. Because when you own music, you're limited to a very small world of music that you can listen to. If you have access, you have all of the world's music at your fingertips. So those are the challenges that we're facing and that we're learning to deal with right now.
That's interesting. We love to own music. Você pode passar... Ah, thank you. So you keep...
Thank you.
Bem, vou fazer a pergunta em português, então. Pode ser em inglês mesmo.
Thank you, because Portuguese I would not have been able to answer you.
Okay.
Or I would have answered something that had nothing to do with what you asked.
Do artists or labels pay to show their musics on Spotify?
So the easy answer is no. Artists who want their music on Spotify can just upload it. Their labels can upload it. They themselves can upload it. It's very, very easy. We don't want artists to pay to have their music on the platform. But some artists do spend money to use Spotify as a marketing platform. They spend a little bit of money to make sure that while you're listening to other music, you hear ads or you see ads for their new albums or their new songs. So they use it as a marketing platform like anything else.
Okay, thank you.
Hi Gary. Nice to meet you. I'm very glad to have you here right now.
Thank you.
So I would like to know about what is your best tip for a brand who is starting now in social media? What is your best tip to appear in Spotify as a great motivator for for your target?
That's a very good question. So what you asked, I think, is for a brand that is just starting out in social media, how do you get on Spotify to make sure that you become impactful on the platform? Okay. So there are really three things. Number one, follow those 3 steps. I hope you jot them down. Number 2, I think it's important for brands that want to be active on social media to have a story to tell. Okay, you have to have a story to tell. There has to be a unique perspective and a narrative. Storytelling is so important now, because that's how you engage someone in a social media stream where there's just so much stuff. It's so easy to get distracted. And the number 3 thing that I would say is that think about social media anywhere, Twitter, Facebook, as a distribution platform for content. So what you create on Spotify, if you create a playlist that matters, consider that content and take that content and distribute it through all the other social media channels, because it's the best way of getting people to care about your story.
Pessoal, Gary will be here tomorrow. Gary vai estar aqui amanhã com uma outra palestra. Something totally different, another approach, right? Vai ter muita descoberta também. Então, quem quiser falar com ele amanhã, participem da palestra dele amanhã também. Acabou o tempo. Tá ali. Thank you so much, Gary. Now we can applaud.